Hello viewer, today we're going to be evaluating how and what methods are used in films and games.
I'm going to be analysing Pirates of the Caribbean 4 on Stranger Tides.
And I'm going to evaluate Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, so sit back, relax, and allow us to rant on about this booty-themed project.
Warning though, massive spoilers on the horizon. So without further ado, here is Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides. On Stranger Tides is the fourth instalment of Disney's franchise, however it is a standalone film unrelated to the original trilogy. The Pirates of the Caribbean films are known for their massive budgets and all-star casts, and On Stranger Tides is no exception. The film stars Johnny Depp and Geoffrey Rush reprising their roles as Captain Jack Sparrow and Captain Barbossa. However, some new characters have appeared in the forms of Ian McShane, who plays the legendary pirate Blackbeard, and Penelope Cruz, who plays his daughter Angelica. Ian McShane is known for his work in the action and fantasy genres, which would attract people who are interested in those genres such as teenagers and young adults. Sources vary, but many agree that On Stranger Tides was the most expensive film ever, costing up to $410 million to make. Because Disney is such a big name in the film industry, just knowing that they made the film guarantees an extremely large audience, and because of the success of the earlier films, they began to act as advertisement for everything Pirates of the Caribbean that Disney released. This film includes many genres, predominantly action-adventure and period fantasy, focusing on pirates. The film is set in a time when piracy was common, especially in the Caribbean, which was the centre of piracy during its golden age. This is also the case in the game Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Pirates of the Caribbean uses mainly fictional characters and events, however there's some characters and legends that actually existed. The second and third Pirates of the Caribbean films revolve around the legend of Davy Jones and his ship the Flying Dutchman. There are many different legends revolving around Davy Jones. Some believed him to be the devil or some sort of god of the afterlife who took care of those killed at sea. This of course is quite different from the romanticised version from the films. In On Stranger Tides, the main antagonist is the pirate Blackbeard, whom of course was the famous pirate captain of the 16th century, also known as Edward Teach. Pirates of the Caribbean romanticises the lives of pirates to fit the action-adventure genre, making it more appealing to younger audiences as the genre is being demanded more and more by teenagers who want to see grittier and more realistic movies. Moving on to narrative structure, On Stranger Tides follows the traditional structure that was theorised by Todorov, who stated, "The minimal complete plot can be seen as the shift from one equilibrium to another." It is traditional for Disney to use this narrative structure as they know the audience is expecting it and actively looking for the different stages. They can familiarise themselves with it and identify more with the story. Because of the size of the budget, Disney would want to ensure that their audience wanted to watch the film, hence using the traditional structure. The story starts out with equilibrium, in this case Jack Sparrow up to his usual antics in London. Then this is followed by the disequilibrium, which is when Jack finds out there is an imposter using his name, forcing him to find out who they are and what they want. After the story is finished, the characters go to a state of neo-equilibrium, when things go back to normal but their lives are forever changed by what's happened. However, the slightly more complex narrative structure, theorised by Prop, also still applies. There are indeed set character types, however some may be swapped around or changed. The obvious hero of the story is Jack Sparrow, with his princess being Angelica and the villain being Blackbeard. The dispatcher who sends the hero on their quest could be either King George or Barbossa, and the helper is Joshua Gibbs, Jack's sidekick. The mermaid Serena acts as a donor, with her tears being one of the 3 ingredients to eternal youth. To make matters a little more confusing, it's the plotline involving Barbossa, Gibbs and the Spaniard. Barbossa is seeking revenge on Blackbeard for sinking his ship and causing him to lose his leg, and so enters into the service of King George II. He uses Gibbs, who knows the route to the Fountain of Youth, to race the Spaniard there. However, when he confronts Blackbeard, he manages to cut him with a blade laced with poison, ending his life. This would make Gibbs a donor as he is guiding Barbossa. Both Blackbeard and the Spaniard are Barbossa's villains, though he uses the Spaniard as a front to fulfill his revenge. However, this could also make Blackbeard Barbossa's princess or prize, as he is solely seeking him out for revenge. But what would this make Barbossa in the main storyline? Would he be another hero, a false hero perhaps? I do think that the use of narrative structure was very effective in the story, because Disney used their traditional structure, which pleased the fans as they could easily identify that it was indeed a Disney product. I also think the use of subplots in relation to props theory was very effective, because it kept the audience second guessing the roles of each character. Pirates of the Caribbean addresses many social issues, especially because of the time in which it's set. One of these is sexism. Upon the release of the film, critics, especially feminists, slammed the film for its lack of female roles. However, out of the two roles, Angelica's can be seen as strong and independent. However, in the case of the other female roles, Serena the Mermaid, there is no denying that she was heavily objectified and ruled over by male characters that had complete control over her fate. One blog, fittingly titled Ruthless Reviews, boldly states, "We are intended to care about her because she is white and naked. In any case, Philip is obsessed with saving her." To an extent, this is correct because Serena has no real power for the majority of the movie and is also completely naked, covered only by Philip's shirt. At least she redeems her power by being the one to provide Jack with the chalices, at which point without her the film would have ended very abruptly. Laura Mulvey, a celebrated theorist and feminist, talked about women in film in her paper Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema. She stated that their appearance is coded for strong visual and erotic impact, going on to say that her visual presence tends to work against the development of a storyline. This is certainly true for the character of Serena. At least racism is quite a minimal issue here. Most of the cast, especially the Spanish characters, were played by people of the same background, which was effective in that it made the film feel more realistic. Symbolism is also a really big part of this film. Noam Chomsky theorized that language is pre-wired into our brains, and visual languages are just as important as written languages. They help us to fill in the blanks that written language just can't explain. To talk about symbolism in the film, I've chosen to analyze a scene, specifically when Jack confronts his imposter and they fight only for him to realize that it's Angelica. The scene starts out and ends very dark, with the only light being from the fire at the center of the room. There is a lack of color outside the flames, which is a visual code that sets the scene perfectly and shows that there could be danger for our protagonist. The fire could also be an indexical symbol or metaphor that represents the passion between the two characters. This portrays to the audience that there is chemistry and history between Jack and Angelica even before he unmasks her. The music is a key part of the scene. It's non-diegetic but is added to by background noises from the fight, including the sounds of swords clashing. The music acts as a cue to stunts that the audience may find almost frightening due to the endangerment of the protagonist. It's a technique often used in action films to put the audience on the edge of their seats, and I think it's used perfectly in this scene, to not only demonstrate the stunts, but also to show the audience that the film is not to be taken too seriously, as we know that Jack isn't going to get hurt, and this is all for theatrical effect. Another kind of symbolism in the form of a technical code is the way the scene is shot. It has a lot of cuts to demonstrate the stunts and action. This is also used to demonstrate how the stunts aren't that serious, but can still keep the audience captivated. Towards the end of the scene there are many non-verbal cues. One I find particularly powerful is when Jack pulls off Angelica's fake facial hair with a sharp motion that clearly causes her pain. This allows the audience to recognize his familiar cocky attitude and demonstrates his pleasure in unmasking her. This is very effective with the camera positioning as well, as the shot is looking down on her face as though from Jack's perspective. This shows that she has very little power in the scene, and the audience is almost shaming her for her actions. Overall, I think the use of genre, narrative structure, and symbolism in relation to social issues added a lot of personality and character to the film. Whether or not this warrants the $410 million cost is down to opinion, but the film only served to be successful for Disney and make the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise even more popular. Now, on to the next link in this project.
Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. Assassin's Creed 4, the 7th installment of a long line of games made by the gaming giant known as Ubisoft. This game revolves around a pirate called Edward Kenway, one of the ancestors of a modern-day assassin known as Desmond Miles. As Kenway, the player must unravel a conspiracy between high-ranking Templars within the British and Spanish empires, who under the guise of cleaning up piracy in the Caribbean, have used their positions to locate the stage. Kenway becomes an unwitting player in their plot when he kills a rogue assassin, Duncan Walpole. Seeing an opportunity for profit, Kenway takes Walpole's place at a meeting of Templars in Havana. His recklessness endangers the entire Assassin's Order, prompting him to pursue the sage and the conspirators from the Yucatan Peninsula to Jamaica. Meanwhile, a band of notorious pirates, including Edward Blackbeard Thatch, Benjamin Hornigold, and Charles Vane, among others, dream of a pirate utopia where man is free to live beyond the reach of kings and rulers. With Edward Kenway's help, they seize control of Nassau and establish a pirate republic. However, poor governance, a lack of economy, and an outbreak of disease bring the pirate state perilously close to collapse. With the founders divided on the best way forward, Kenway attempts to resolve the dispute, but it's too late to stop the Templars from exploiting the situation for their own ends. Eventually, Kenway uncovers the location of the observatory and retrieves the artifacts powering it, but Kenway is betrayed in the last moment. After a brief stint in prison for the crimes of piracy, Edward escapes with the aid of Atabai, the assassin mentor, and elects to join their order. Chasing the Templar conspirators, Kenway retrieves the artifact and returns it to the observatory, sealing it away for good. He's left facing an uncertain future with his newfound convictions until he receives a letter informing of the passing of his wife and the imminent arrival of his unknown daughter, Jennifer Scott. Kenway travels back to England, promising Atabai that we will one day return to continue a fight against the Templars. And from this brief talk about the plot, we understand that there's a lot of characters, each with their own roles and tropes which define who each of them are, and depending on their position, what they do. We owe this type of storytelling to Zvitan Todorov and Vladimir Prop. Todorov and Prop created character tropes, and the main character in both the film and the game in this documentary is the hero, a character which changes the most in order to create the happy ending which we all love. This is what Todorov theorized. No matter what genre or platform, game, TV, film, they're all still the same. It can be retold over and over without it getting old. Prop's theory about narrative structure is also true in this case. It starts with a slow beginning, everything's okay until a certain point, the equilibrium, something happens, it climaxes, the disequilibrium, until it's brought to a final battle and the hero's journey's over, but nothing will be the same again. This is the neo-equilibrium. In this instance, Edward was a pirate, living a life of plundering and loving every second until a death changed him, completely changing the trail of events from then on. In this game, along with Pirates of the Caribbean, falls along the genre of action-adventure, pirate, stealth, and romance. Of course, each genre has their own trees and branches upon branches of subgenres, but this game specifically uses it in their gameplay and style. Assassin's Creed establishes style when it comes to telling stories. A young romantic or early 20s rogue is going about their way to cause havoc or swoon many. This is where the romance genre comes into play, and even the adventure. Then, a tragedy happens. The action genre comes into play. Then, they become a stone-cold killer and fight for a better cause, bringing in stealth, and in this case, pirates. I'm going to analyse the death of Edward Thatch, also known as Blackbeard, because I believe this moment was the most influential in Edward's life. Vengeance driving him to join the Assassin's Order. It's the most emotional, well-filmed, and action-based moments in the entire game, incorporating boat fights, stealth, rope swinging, cannons, and ending on a piece which changed the entire mood, with a well-positioned camera to leave what happened to the imagination.
In a world without gold, we might have been heroes!
Right away, we see the action taking place. The camera shakes with Blackbeard getting shot in order to give off the sense of impact when it hits his shoulder. He falls to his knees. As we see here, the soldier stood above Blackbeard. This size comparison is a method known as levels. Someone being stood over someone else could portray either importance or superiority, and the lower person could represent something bad happening. For example, curling in a ball with sadness, but in this instance, he's fell to his knees. He's lower than a superior man. Something's going to happen to him. This can also be called interpersonal distance. He calls to Kenway. The camera cuts to his face. You see the emotion and the way he looks to his friend, even if he's being attacked. He's worried for his friend. He's trying to protect him. The camera shakes to show unease while Blackbeard says his last words. Edward's still trying to watch over his friend. The camera stops shaking as both men stop moving and Edward screams for his friend. This catches the eye. Sudden change subconsciously makes the mind get more enveloped due to it reacting more to difference. This is known as a non-verbal cue. The camera hides Blackbeard's head. Slow motion occurs. Blood splatters. A hat falls. We don't need to see detail in order to understand what's happened here. The camera uses symbolization to portray this. Edward looks distraught, then is thrown off the boat, to which the camera goes back to normal speed. This is a literal interruption that makes us as people dislike being forced into a new situation in times of vulnerability, making you attached to the character more, and making you want to resume playing as you'd want to avenge someone you're attached to. This game completely changed the playing field. It's a prime example on how modern games focus more on storytelling over what technology can do. Audiences want more of this. Moments like this are what drives people to play more, to get wrapped up in a story. They want to be the character, which is why things like cosplay exist these days, and it's also why gamers have such high standards of what they play. They want to recreate the joy and emotion they felt with the character. and get annoyed when they can't get that same feeling. Obviously directed towards teenagers, this game appeals to an even older generation due to the mature themes and ideals. It interests people, and in my opinion, it's a brilliant way to learn about history. A problem about this game though is the lack of females. The game's equal when it comes to race. Even though it's set in the slave trade, Edward Kenway frees a slave known as Adewale and sets him as his first mate, making him equal to him. There is however a lack of females, and this is due to the time period not allowing females to be pirates. But to tackle this, Ubisoft placed a real female pirate known as Mary Read, who hid behind the guise of James Kidd.
It's the bastard son of the late William Kidd.
So in my opinion, I'd say this game is pretty equal when it comes to gender, ethnicity, and so on. This does remind me of a thought a theorist known as Laura Mulvey shared, where she said images, characters, plots and stories, and dialogues in films are inadvertently built on the ideas of patriarchies, both within and beyond sexual context, which means that even with a female hero, it's still based on sexuality. Finally, I'm going to talk about Ubisoft and how they create products for a specific audience, and how with games like this they open up the playing field a bit by welcoming historians, teenagers, adults and more. People from different walks of life would love this game one way or another. Founded in March 1986, Ubisoft is the child of the Guillemot family. Since their creation they made online games, setting their audience for a mass crowd and taking it safe by creating things which be appreciated due to it being simple or to a younger audience, complex. They went mainly unnoticed, with the odd blip on the radar was games such as Rayman or Splinter Cell. Other than this, Ubisoft were the underdogs in the gaming world, being shadowed by companies like EA or Infinity Ward, until one day they decided to focus on story over making more games. In 2007, Ubisoft will put on the map with their massive hit game Assassin's Creed. From here on, Assassin's Creed will be the game to carry them. Due to this, they had to set a target demographic which would rope in the most money, no matter what they churned out. They targeted teenagers from here on out, the newbies to gaming, new jobs, fresh money, and a love for action. Assassin's Creed became a yearly franchise, much like any other AAA game, and most adults got sick of it. But with Assassin's Creed 4, Ubisoft changed the quality of their games. The vast open worlds, the driven story, the lovable characters. People were looking at Assassin's Creed again. People in their mid-20s would be open to the idea of checking out a new series because people talk about it, and if the reviews are amazing, thus changing the target audience. In conclusion, I believe that this game combines elements from all walks of life, multiple theorists, different ways of telling stories, and much more. No other game has tried to tackle such a risky period of time, and Ubisoft tackled it and flew, and it did it in such a neat bundle that no one even realised that they were dealing with that.